boys and girls. Hope you are all keeping well and safe. Today we're going to be looking at time and the clock. So in last week's lesson, we were discussing how time is measured. We spoke about how it can be measured in big units, and one I forgot was millenniums, which is the measure of 1,000 years. Then we have centuries, which is the passing of 100 years. Decades, which means 10 years. And then the units of measurement get smaller, and time is divided into years, seasons, of which there are 4, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, months, of which there are 12 in every year, weeks, of which there are about 4 per month, days of the weeks, parts of the day, like morning, noon, evening, night, and finally, hours, minutes, and seconds. Today we are focusing on the clock, which measures the hours, minutes, and seconds of every day. First of all, we must remind ourselves of how many hours are in a day. Can you remember? That's right, 24. Now, the clock we are working with today is called an analog clock. It looks like this. This is what we call the clock face. However, this analog clock has no numbers on it, so let's put them in. It's always a good idea to start with the 4 main numbers, which are in the positions of north, south, east, and west on the clock. So first we insert 12, followed by 6, which is directly opposite 12, followed by 3, and then 9. Once we have these 4 numbers in the right places, we can fill in the remaining numbers. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11. Now you might be wondering, if there are 24 hours in a day, then how come the clock doesn't have 24 numbers? Which is a good question. This is because there are 12 hours which we call morning and day hours, or AM hours, and 12 hours of the day which we call evening and night hours, or PM hours. For example, you all know that there is a time 12 midnight and also a time 12 noon. One is in the middle of the night and the other is in the middle of the day. Now, what else does this clock need? That's right, it needs hands. So what are hands? Well, they are not like the hands on our bodies. Instead, hands on a clock are the arrows or lines which point to the numbers on a clock face so we can tell the time. So first we will add the big hand. This is also known as the minute hand because it moves every moment that a minute of time passes. Then we add the little hand. This should be about half the size of the big hand, especially when we are drawing clocks, so that people can read the time correctly. The little hand is also known as the hour hand. It tells us what hour we are in. The time on this clock at the moment is 3 o'clock. As you all know, when the big hand points to 12, it means it is an o'clock time. The little hand here is pointing to 3, so that tells us that the hour is 3, which means it is 3 o'clock. Sometimes a clock has a third hand, and if so, this is known as the second hand, because it tick-tocks around the clock, counting every single second that passes. However, the clock we are going to be working with today only has 2 hands, a big minute hand and a small hour hand. Okay, first things first. When the clock hands move, they always move in a clockwise direction. That means from left to right. These arrows in the picture are showing the direction that the hands always move. They never move backwards because time doesn't go backwards, only forward. Now this analog clock, like the one we drew before, has two hands, a minute hand and an hour hand. However, on this clock you'll notice little lines between each of these numbers. You might be wondering what they mean. Well, each line represents a minute. So when a minute of time has passed, the big hand, or minute hand, moves forward by 1 minute, like this. If 2 minutes pass, it will move again, like this. And so on. Let's bring the clock back to 3 o'clock again. Now watch the minute hand do a full rotation until the time reaches 4 o'clock. This shows an hour of time passing. Of course, the minute hand doesn't move that quickly in real life. Now, do you know how many of these little lines are around the whole clock? Another way of phrasing that question is, how many minutes are there in 1 hour? Yes, that's right. 60 minutes. So the minute hand has to move 60 times before it reaches the next hour on the clock. And how many seconds are there in 1 minute? Yes, correct. 60 seconds. So every 60 seconds, the minute hand on the clock will move. So now the time is 4 o'clock. Let's look at how many minute lines there are between each of the numbers. Can you count them? Have a look. Yes, that's right. There are 5 little lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This means that every time the minute hand moves from number to number on the clock, 5 minutes of time are passing. Let's make it 4 o'clock again, and this time we will move the minute hand 5 minutes at a time so you can see what I mean. So when it moves to 1, 5 minutes of time have passed. Then 10 minutes, then 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and finally 60. So this shows you that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Okay, so today we are going to focus on o'clock times, which you know well, and half-past times. Then next week we will move on to some harder ones. So now it is 5 o'clock. We know this because the big minute hand is pointing to 12 and the little hour hand is pointing to 5. Let's make it 6 o'clock. Now, where will the big and little hand be pointing? Imagine it in your mind first. 6 o'clock. Okay, do you know? Great. Let's see if you were right. Well, 6 o'clock is an hour later than 5 o'clock, so we will jump this clock forward by 1 hour, and you can see. There we go. The big hand is pointing to 12 and the little hand to 6. Notice how they point exactly to the numbers 12 and 6 when we do an o'clock time. Now we are going to jump 2 hours later. So if the time is 6 o'clock now, what time will it be in 2 hours? Add 6 plus 2 in your head and that will tell you. Correct. 6 plus 2 is 8. So 2 hours later will be 8 o'clock. Again, see how perfectly the hands point to 12 and 8. This is how we know that it is definitely 8 o'clock exactly. Okay, now we are going to move on to half past times. So half past means that half the time of 1 hour has passed. Think about that for a moment. If there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, what is half of that time? Half of 60. Meaning we divide the number 60 into 2 equal halves. Do you know the answer? Well done. 30. 30 is half of 60 because 30 plus 30 makes 60. Look at this clock again. It says 8 o'clock. If we were to make 30 minutes go by moving the minute hand, watch where the big hand will land. Let's jump in fives. 5 minutes have passed, 10 minutes, 15, 20, 25, and now 30. This is the half past time on a clock, when the big minute hand points to 6. Think of the clock face like a pizza for a moment. Yum. Here is a whole pizza. If we divide the pizza in half, we cut it down the middle exactly into 2 equal parts, like this. Now, do you notice that half the pizza looks like half the clock? This is a good way to remember half past times. So now the time on our clock is 8:30. But wait, what is different about the hour hand? Is it still pointing at 8? No, it's not. If you notice, the hour hand has moved a little bit past 8. This is because 30 minutes have passed the hour of 8, meaning we are slowly moving on to the next hour, which will be 9. Watch. If we keep moving from 8:30 onwards to 9 o'clock. Let's jump in fives again. Watch the hour hand while we move. It's getting nearer to 9 with each movement of the minute hand. And when we reach 9 o'clock, it is now exactly pointing to 9 because that is the new hour time. Okay, let's make the time 9:30. Think about it in your head first. Where will the big minute hand be pointing? And where will the little hand be pointing? Will it be pointing exactly at 9 anymore? No, you're right, it won't. Because the minutes will be moving past 9, the little hand will end up a little bit after the number 9. Watch and see. There we go. 9:30. Now let's move the clock to 2 hours later. So the time is now 9:30. What is 2 hours later? Add 2 to 9 and what do you get? That's right, 11. So if it is 9:30 now, then 2 hours later will be 11:30. What does 11:30 look like? Think of it in your head first. Where will the big minute hand be pointing? And where will the little hour hand be pointing? Will the little hour hand be pointing exactly at 11 if it is a 9:30 time? No, you're right, it won't, because the minutes will be moving past the hour of 11, so the little hand will end up a little bit after the number 11. Watch and see. Well done. The big hand is pointing at 6 to show us 9:30, and the little hand is a little bit after 11. You can play with this clock yourself at home. If you type the words Top Marks Teaching Clock into Google, it will bring you to this clock and you can move the hands about for yourself. I will also provide a link below this YouTube video of a game that you can play to practice your o'clock and half-past times. I'll put it on the homework sheet too. So well done for listening, and I will see you next week for our new clock times. Until then, keep practicing drawing clocks because that's how you really get good at reading the time.